Today, we're going to dive into something pretty fascinating about Seoul, South Korea. We're going to explore why, in one of the most futuristic cities on the planet, a simple question, where do you live, has become the ultimate way to figure out exactly who you are. And yeah, this quote just hits the nail on the head. In Seoul, this isn't just small talk. It's not about your commute. This single question is absolutely loaded with assumptions about your money, your education, your family, even your future. It's like a social X-ray in 5 simple words. So let's really break this down. How did a physical location, a spot on a map, get so tangled up with a person's entire identity? Well, it's because your address isn't just about showing you've got money. It's a signal for everything else. It tells people you have access to the best schools, which of course is the pipeline to the best universities. It suggests a certain kind of family background, which is a massive factor when it comes to marriage. It's one single piece of data that tells a whole life story. And you can see how this creates this incredibly rigid path through life. Look at step 1. It's live in Gangnam. Your address isn't the prize you get at the end of the game. It is literally the entry ticket you need just to start playing. From there, it's all dominoes. The right address gets you into the right school, which gets you into a top Sky University. That's Seoul National, Korea, or Yonsei. Then you land a coveted job at a chaebol, a huge conglomerate like Samsung or Hyundai. And the final step? Marry someone who followed the exact same path. So you'd think, right? The people who actually succeed, who check all those boxes, they must be happy. But the reality is way, way more complicated. It turns out there's a huge price to pay for winning in this kind of system. And here is the central paradox. The dream is that if you follow this path, you get freedom, you get success. But the reality for so many is a life built on crippling debt for that apartment, constant, crushing pressure to keep up appearances, and this feeling that there is absolutely no way off the treadmill. You've won the race, but now you're trapped. And that feeling of being trapped, it doesn't just mess with individuals. You can see the consequences ripple across the whole country. You get this widespread burnout, even among the so-called elites who made it. All that pressure contributes to some of the world's lowest birth rates and a huge rise in single-person households. And when the system feels this rigged, what happens? You see a brain drain, with talented young people just leaving the country for better opportunities. It all adds up to really low happiness levels, especially for young people. The system is basically exhausting its own population. So how did it get this intense? Well, this isn't some new problem that came with K-pop and smartphones. To really understand what's going on, you have to look back at a blueprint that's literally centuries old. Way back in the Joseon dynasty, Seoul was it. Unlike Japan or China, which had multiple big cities, Seoul was the one and only center of power and culture. If you wanted to be somebody, you had to be in the capital. Period. Then, during the Japanese occupation, land ownership gets legally formalized, turning it into a concrete modern asset. And then, the Korean War just destroyed everything else. When your history, your possessions, your community are all gone, what's the one thing left that you can actually trust? The ground beneath your feet. Okay, so you have these deep historical roots putting a huge value on Seoul real estate. And then, in the 20th century, the government basically threw gasoline on the fire. This wasn't just a cultural trend, it was a deliberate, state-led project. And this is the moment where it all comes together. In the 1970s, the South Korean government didn't just let Gangnam develop organically. No, it was intentionally planned and designated as the official place for the nation's most successful people to live. The state itself drew a line on the map and said, this is where success lives. That one decision forever linked a specific address to the national identity of success. So when you mix that deep history with that very specific government policy, you end up in a world where a person's home becomes the ultimate measure of their and their family's entire worth. And I mean, just look at the numbers. The stakes are unbelievably high. For the typical South Korean family, almost all of their net worth is tied up in their home. It's not in stocks, it's not in savings. So the location and the value of your apartment isn't just a lifestyle choice. It's a direct reflection of your family's entire financial history. And then, another massive shock hits the system, the 1997 Asian financial crisis. Suddenly, the promise of a stable, lifelong job at a big company just vanished. Trust in corporations completely collapsed. So what was left? Once again, the only thing that felt real, the only thing that felt safe was land. real estate became the one and only thing you could count on. And there's a huge cultural piece to this, too. In a society where marriage is often seen as a strategic alliance between two families, you need hard proof of stability. And let's be honest, an address in a top neighborhood is the hardest proof to fake. You can lie about your job, you can stretch the truth about your connections, but you cannot fake a deed to a Gangnam apartment. It's an undeniable signal of your family's resources. So you've got history, government policy, economics, and culture, all pushing in the exact same direction, creating this incredibly powerful system that feels like it has no emergency exit. But you have to wonder, was this whole situation inevitable? Well, this comparison with Japan is really telling. Japan has Tokyo, of course, but it also has other huge urban centers like Osaka and Nagoya. The power is more spread out. And crucially, Japan's land myth was completely shattered when its economic bubble burst in the 90s. Plus, culturally, renting is totally normal and socially acceptable there. It just goes to show you, Seoul's situation is the result of a very specific set of choices, not some universal law of how big cities work. And that really brings us to the heart of it all. This obsession with your address, it's really just a symptom of something much deeper. It's what happens in a society that's so hyper-competitive that people have lost the ability to just trust and evaluate each other as, well, as people. When you can't trust someone's character or their skills on their own merits, you fall back on external signals. And in Seoul, the most powerful, undeniable signal is your address. So we're left with this massive question. When a social structure is this deeply embedded, woven together from history, politics, and money over hundreds of years, can it ever actually be changed? Or is this just the reality for generations to come? It's a really profound challenge for one of the most dynamic societies on Earth.